Okay, so on section 5 of the site assessment, we want to look at the solar access and the availability of sun that's out there. So there are quite a few ways of doing this. Now, here's how I did mine. What I did is I brought the solar pathfinder onto the roof of the location that we're talking about here. You can use, say, the Sun Pathfinder Assistant program. There's a number of ways of doing that, but what I did is I took this pathfinder and I went to this back corner right here. Why I did that was because I wanted to really get the most shaded part of the system. I realized very quickly that the top parts were not going to be shaded at all. This part wasn't going to have any real main issues, but this back corner was going to have some issues. So what I did was I took this image right here of the worst case scenario of the shade effect. I took a digital camera onto the roof, took a picture of the overlay of the fisheye that's on top of the solar pathfinder, and then what I did is I took it back and I photoshopped this red line around here of where the shading was, because I really wanted this to stand out to show how it worked. And that's the reason why I did that on this particular one. And what I found was that there was a 98% available sun at this location. On the site assessment, you're going to want to have a solar pathfinder, then you're going to want to have a location of where this was taken, and then you're going to want to show where this particular information then came from. So in section 5.2, this is where you're going to use the energy periscope to come up with a 1 kilowatt system, 1 kilowatt DC. We're going to go to energy periscope. We're going to enter in all the parameters of a 1 kilowatt system, and I'm going to put that data right into here. I took an image for a 1 kilowatt system. I came up with that data, and I plugged it in right here, and notice that 98% correlates to that 2% shading that was here. In the very early morning, there's a little bit of shading by some of this material, this tree here, and some of this deck material that's here. That's where this 1 kilowatt, it must be 1 kilowatt. The reason we'd use 1 kilowatt is in PV systems for residential, our base unit is 1 kilowatt. You know what's interesting is the very quick side of things. If you ever do a shingled roof and you go to order roofing material, you buy a square, which is a 10-foot by 10-foot section of roof material. So a square is what the base unit of measure is for roofing materials. When we do PV, we deal with 1 kilowatt system. When we buy eggs, we buy a dozen. So there's always base units, and what we want you to be able to recognize when you look at a PV site assessment is a very good, viewable, measurable, quantitative value is a kilowatt, 1K. So this is what 1K will give me of energy performance, is about 1,000 kilowatt hours of electrical energy at the end of this 1 year of production. That just gives you a rough ballpark to know at this location, this site, this is what you have to have. To really complete this site assessment properly, you really must have 1 kilowatt system and a PV watts showing where this data came from. Now, what you must do on section 5.3 is explain to the client what that 1 kilowatt system means. Here again, remember we talked about the angles, so we said 22 degrees, that's what a 512 pitch roof. I know a 512 pitch roof is slightly steeper than 22 degrees. I think we say it's 22.5, but on the angle finder that we used on this site, it came out to being 22. That's the value we used. On PV watts, the D-rate factor from DC to AC is 0.8. That's just a good established value. And that may change due to other parameters, but for us, this is what we want to state. Then we want to say that you're going to propose 1,051 kilowatt hours. If there was no shade, it was 1,071. And you want to talk about the pros and the cons of that. That's really what section 5 is. What does the proposed location give you? Could we have done a site on the west side of the building? And the answer possibly could have been yes. But using the solar pathfinder, I did a quick cursory walk around and I realized that this tree is going to shade the south-facing roof line pretty much all year round. And then the second part about the problem is going to be that this location here is still shaded by that tree, more so than I wanted it to be, but here was a little bit better, and I was happy with it. So that's what we're expecting from the section 5.0 through 5.3, and that gets us then into the solar description and the solar system description next.